Okay, we got ourselves a fresh best of 3. This time a ZVP. In the bottom right for Shopify Rebellion, we do have Lambo. In the top left for Team Liquid, he is MaNa. Big fan of the instant probe exits to block the hatchery. Lambo will know this. And just have to accept taking the third base as his natural. So I did not have a lot of faith in MaNa versus KvZ. I was proven kind of correct based off of their most recent history. KvZ had defeated him 4 out of 5 times in the last month, 2 months, basically. But also the state of the matchup seemed quite difficult for a lot of Protoss players. And MaNa completely proved me wrong. I mean, he just slapped KvZ in the face. As if, what problems? Protoss has problems right now? Like, what are you talking about? So I don't really know where I'm sitting at right now for the ZVP here. Lambo did have some trouble against his last Protoss opponents, going to game 3 and getting into the late game, but that's all I know. I think Lambo usually has pretty good ZVP. I think it's pretty consistent for him. His ZVT can be extraordinary, but it's a little more up and down. And I've also certainly been, forced to put my foot in my mouth when it comes to judging Lambo's abilities. So I don't know where I'm at for this CVP. I can't influence your bets, guys. You have to trust your heart, trust your gut. This might just be a very, very evenly matched ZVP, actually. MaNa's playing well, Lambo's playing well. I think Lambo might overall be stronger in ZVP than MaNa's PvZ. I don't know. Only thing I can tell you is that, yes, MaNa did successfully block out Lambo's natural. Lambo should be used to this, should be accustomed to it, especially versus MaNa. It's annoying. And for MaNa, I know that he just believes it is 100% worth it every single time, no matter his follow-up. Because of the annoyance of the drones having to move over to mines, it's a lot of lost mining time, as well as the lack of creep throw between the bases, so that will influence either adept attacks or oracle movement. Like, you listen to MaNa talk about it, and you're like, yeah, I know, always block the hatch. You're like, well, crazy. But obviously not every Protoss always sends out the probe immediately to guarantee the hatch block. Some of them still are doing pylon probes, which don't always block the hatchery. But anyway, so it's like Stargate or Twilight Council, like both have their reasons for liking that blocked natural. We do have a Twilight Council on the way, however, we also have a Robo coming down with it. And it is going to be for the classic Resonant Enclaves. Classic! So the Resonant Enclave builds, we know how that goes. Guys, it depends on 3-gate, 4-gate. There's some minor adjustments made in the build itself to allow for 1 or 2 more adepts in the first attack. So on and so forth, but without the creep spread between the bases, we know that's a little more difficult for the Zerg players to respond. Also, you cannot wall off your natural. I mean, I guess you could. The problem is that your drones are already saturated in your third base, right? So I guess you could, upon seeing a Twilight Council opener, go, oh, move my drones on my natural, and then I'll wall off my natural. But then usually you have a gas that's set up at the third base too. Like, it gets kind of weird to do that. And Lambo, I'm not sure, is actually complete. Oh no, he completely knows about it. Just kidding. An Overlord is literally right there. Overlord just is like, hey, hiya. No soccer to try even block that out. MaNa not really caring about being scouted, and Lambo is responding appropriately. We kind of know how this goes, right? 40, 41 drones, and then you go ahead and produce your Lings to get to the Roachmore, and the Dark Shrine is on the way as a compliment to the Resonant Enclaves, but this is not unexpected. Lambo should be wary of the possibility of a Dark Shrine follow-up, although he has not scouted it. It is in the natural, and his Overlord's not moving. MaNa might move this the wrong direction. Okay, no. It's great. It's great. So it's up to Lambo to actually change the course. Yes, exactly. Change the direction of the Overlord. It's a good thing that he does. I believe that Overlord has enough health left over to see the Dark Shrine. There it is. There it is. There it is. Adepts going to the main base. Have found not much yet. Dark Shrine was revealed, and Lambo should be at any moment now putting down spores. Once he checks his opponent's base. Hello? Oh, I'm a little worried about this. I mean, maybe he just knows he doesn't... Spores do build very quickly, so I'm like holding off and getting really scared for him. Hello? I don't know, man. That lair is definitely not going to be done. I don't know what happened. Lambo absolutely saw that it was a dark shrine, but I was trying to check his vision specifically, and I did not notice his camera, the actual camera on the minimap. That's what I was trying to look at. I did not notice his camera going back to MaNa's natural. That's a pretty big mistake. Now, fortunately, MaNa did not warp in 4 DTs at once. If he had, he absolutely could have gone after the main hatchery and also, of course, the lair. I mean, it really would have been an excellent kill. As it is, Lambo's emergency response to the DT is probably fine. It's not ideal, of course. You know, this is causing a lot of chaos and mistakes from him, but it's not the worst thing ever. And MaNa was probably a bit reserved with his Dark Shrine, Dark Templar warp-ins, because he figured, oh, he's going to have some defenses against it. He might have also had a money problem, I'm not completely sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if he just assumed that Lambo, well, like, oh, I saw it, like, I guess they'll defend against it, and then walk into the main and went, huh? Like, well, why aren't you defending? Very awkward there for Lambo, and as I said, I think it's fine, but it's not ideal. It's a lot of chaos. And, the alternative could have easily been a Spork Brawler actually made and then a quick surround on 1 DT to get the kill. Right? Interrupt MaNa's plan a little bit. Can't happen when Lambo just completely did not expect the DTs. This is very bold. 2 queens coming forward trying to kill that Warp Prism. MaNa thought there was only 1. Now there are 2 once again. Thank God for the Warp Prism range pickup. So during that entire time, plus the Archon harassment, MaNa has been settling on 3 bases quite nicely. 6 gas is set up, going into Disruptors, Blink, and +1. Lambo is going into an Infestation Pit, so definitely not going to be building an army of, I guess, immense size. Quickly at all. Excuse me. So the 4th base on the way for MaNa should be safe, should actually get up and running, because again, Lambo's not going for a big old punch to the face. MaNa going for an Archon Stalker attack to the left side is a little funny, but it's actually pretty good. The Roaches are out of position, they don't have Roach speed, and the army that is here is just a little, it's like the exact right amount of not enough. You know, the Lings do come in, though, and that's going to add enough to actually defend against this. But before those Lings came in, it was that perfect number of units that, you know, the Protoss player could snowball upon. Because it's 6 Roaches die, then 6 appear, then 3 appear, then 4 appear. And that Warp Prism somehow still alive despite the Corrosive Bile. Shout out to those Warp Prism, man. It is battered and bruised. It is working with, like, no windshield. The seat belt is actually flapping in your face. And it's alive. It's kicking. Nicely done, Warp Prism. But that was a bit of an overextension, I think. Like, it was weird how effective it looked initially. Because it was a very odd move out with a very small army. But without the Stalkers totally and completely surviving, 7 of them did die in this game, I think that was a little bit of an overextension. So Lambo gets his 4th base up and running, despite Lambo's attempts to stop it, I guess. I mean, if that really had snowballed. Run into his own Corrosive Bile. Roach speed's finally done. It's a little bit better on the chase. Disruptor comes in here off the Warp Prism. Oh, it's going to connect with a decent number of units. That is a nice shot. And MaNa is not going to be shy about continuing to be aggressive, using, again, a very injured Warp Prism to go ahead and warp in these +1 Stalkers. +2, not quite halfway done. We also do have Adepts in the Natural going after a couple of drones. Also a bit of a distraction. Ravagers not to be seen on the front lines for Lambo, as he also gets supply blocked with 2 Overlords going down. More drones still dying to the Adepts, I believe, and the Warp Prism still involved, carrying around these Disruptors for a safe retreat of the Stalkers. MaNa actually has even more room to push there than I think he realized. Perhaps a little bit shyer because of the previous fight not going exactly totally completely fine. Doesn't push the issue here. He's getting charged. That +2 continues to move forward. Templar Archives also on the way. Lambo going for the most amazing structure in the whole wide world, the Lurker Den. Hive is done, Lurker Den's on the way. Upgrades will be involved with the Lurkers as they form. Vipers as well, 4 Vipers, excellent number. And Lambo's getting to a 5th base as well. Not exactly a super rich Zerg player this entire game, right? as Lambo has almost matched him on base counts in this game. So Lambo has had to play a bit more of the reserved style, I suppose. You know, definitely no chance for him to actually build up and mass a huge army. If he had done that, it probably would not have worked. But if you are going to play into that later stage of ZVP, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to get lurkers. Lurkers are pretty good. MaNa should expect this. MaNa should be wondering where this game is going the more that things pretty much don't happen. You know? Oops, on again. That he should be wondering, are we going into Broodlords, which can be an option in some scenarios. I'd say that the least likely option, just because they're usually a surprise, like they're almost like a cheese in a way when you dive towards Greater Spire versus Protoss, or they're used for very, very, very late game scenarios, right, where the map is kind of getting smaller and the armies are huge. So the more likely option is, of course, lurkers. And what are lurkers good against? Basically all of the ground army of Protoss. So usually this is the time which a Protoss player, I mean, regardless of what they're facing, whether it's a Spire or a Lurker Den, is moving on to Stargates. But recall that MaNa never opened up with a Stargate, doesn't have one, can't just throw it on a fleet beacon. If he does want to get to Carriers and Tempest, it's going to be a very, very long road. Longer than you might think, considering some of the other games you've seen PvZ-wise, right? Because so many of them do start off with a Stargate. That was a kill, not a cancel, by the way, and 400 minerals still a chunk of change. Attack on the left side as well, with the Lurkers and the Vipers. Disruptors are available, but that's where the Vipers play a part, right? And there's not that many Disruptors, so one of them does get abducted and somehow just dodged. That just dodged all of the Lurker shots. What's happening? Wait, two of them actually pop off? Now, one of them did. Second one died, just shy of actually getting the kill. Right side also, things are happening, but that is favorable for MaNa, as he definitely has more army supply. And on the left, Lambo's Lurker is not able to continue pushing. They did have their range upgrade, but we're a little late to the adaptive talons. Now that'll finish up as well, but it looks like the Vipers, despite being with the Lurkers, and that's usually the power duo, that's the power couple right there, didn't actually push past MaNa's defense. And I am actually very surprised by that. There are two things going on, so I couldn't quite see how that unfolded, but basically MaNa just made those Lurkers look like nothing. Now, he should not get overconfident. I still don't think you're gonna want to play mass ground Protoss versus someone who has Lurkers. Now they're both, like, they got both their upgrades. Both their upgrades, and they're working on +3 attack. Like, they're good. They are good units. And eventually, the Protoss ground force cannot compete with them, as the numbers continue to grow and their mobility kind of shines once they have those adaptive talents. MaNa is actually the one that really needs to make sure that he keeps Lambo under his thumb. He ever lets Lambo move across the map with 15 Lurkers and 4 Vipers, forget about it. Forget about it. And, well, this is his attempt to stall it out, but he's not exactly gaining anything with this. The Storm's not even really killing a whole lot. The Lurker's not able to be sniped down. An attack on the left side as well. Some Lurkers were left behind. Lambo's no fool. However, those will be cleared up, as an observer was brought with this army. Nicely done by MaNa, but MaNa might still be in a lot of trouble. Lurkers, taking advantage of that high ground. Those Stalkers could not compete with that. Disruptor left all by its lonesome, not going to be able to help out. That Nexus is a goner. And unfortunately for MaNa, he cannot trade. Even if he did get this hatchery, that isn't exactly a fair trade, considering the way that the Zerg economy works and how cheaper their hatcheries are and so on and so forth. No, MaNa is taking too long to get to those Stargates, unfortunately. He could not stop Lambo from getting to a really good number of Lurkers, you know, because like 6, 8, I guess, like, is kind of manageable. 8's really pushing it, though. But then Lambo got to 15 and then left 3 at home, so 12 were kind of marching across the map. Now we're down to 11, again, with some, I think, at home. Actually, most of them at home now that he's responded to the attack. But the point is, like, MaNa can't actually compete against the ground army with his own ground army. Not unless it's the most ideal circumstances, right? Like a huge concave, storms preemptively, perfect layering of composition, maybe a couple disruptors popping off, and then, yeah, maybe. But it's so hard to get the ideal positioning when the Lurkers are actually kind of mobile. The Surround's going to come in here, so these Lurkers are dead, but it's going to take all of MaNa's focus to clear this out. Meanwhile, Lambo attacks over onto the 4th base of MaNa. Shield battery is a good attempt to save some of these cannons, but yep, just gets targeted down. Viper abducts the Disruptor after he got a shot off, so some of the Lurkers are weakened, and MaNa is once again trying to come in here with a Surround. I think he's very intentfully doing this. The Observer! Oh, there was a second observer. Good God, good God. All right, we're good, we're good. But the one observer did die to the Protoss storm. Second observer is seen, noticed by MaNa, is brought along with the rest of the army to try and clear out the rest of the lurkers, and Lambo suddenly is the one lower in supply. He wasn't exactly banking a whole lot during a lot of these engagements, and lurkers are definitely expensive. 6 more are on the way, as well as a bunch more Hydras. These Hydras, by the way, not as good as they should be. They're missing their range upgrade. Only just now gotten. And MaNa is even on the counterattack. A couple of surrounds on the lurker armies has done MaNa well, and he is looking to push his momentum. However, the lurkers have been made once again for Lambo, so he is trying to stand his ground, and there is the question. Can MaNa, in a direct head-on fight, no surround, not really a big concave, can he actually take on lurkers? Again, perfect layering of composition, I suppose. Charge lots with the Archons, or the focus fire of the Stalkers, a couple of storms to injure a bunch of stuff, like maybe. But that's really where it gets quite difficult. Lambo is going to continue building up his lurker count to ensure his survival for the next few minutes. But while he does that, MaNa is also thriving once again. He's finally rebuilt this 5th base, is actually working on a 6th. So his probes are all back to mining, and 84 probes give him a lot of money to work with. He did add on a Stargate, but I don't believe he ever got around to adding a fleet beacon. That was when he was desperate times. So no transfer over into carriers anytime soon. Another surround opportunity has come forth here, but does Lambo have too many lurkers? That sometimes happens, man. MaNa's army did come in from 2 different angles, but the power of the lurkers makes it an okay trade. Lambo coming out ahead on the supply, does the wise thing and pulls back with his lurkers just to buy some more time. If MaNa had been able to maybe include the Zealots coming in from this pathway a little bit sooner, that might have ended in his supply advantage. But he had 2 angles of attack, but not quite as much buffer as he was hoping for on particularly the right side, I think. The right side did not have a lot of buff units. It was Stalkers getting obliterated. So, but it's certainly a more interesting ZVP that has had many battles with lurkers. I mean, this is kind of the ideal situation we were thinking of when lurkers were first introduced and gateway units became more viable with Legacy of the Void. You know, Legacy of the Void came out, they were like, lurkers, people were like, oh, awesome, and then they were like, well, also, we want to change how Protoss works, so we're going to try and make Protoss actually, like, not a deathball race. Awesome, great, fantastic stuff. Oh, no, lurkers are a bit of a problem. Like, what do we do against this? Disruptors! Okay, Disruptors are great, awesome. Okay, but then they got Vipers, so what do we do now? High Templars? Well, it's a bit of a dance, doesn't really work out in my favor. I'm just going to go into Stargates. And then, for the most part, that's been ZVP for the last 5 years, right? If the lurkers come out, the Stargates have to be on the way. So, it is what it is, and we are getting to Stargates now that MaNa has room to breathe, but it does kind of suck because these are the more fun engagements, right? Seeing if the Protoss can get a good enough concave or a surround, and seeing the layering of the army come into effect, seeing the mobility of both armies trying to outmatch each other. I mean, that's the fun thing about StarCraft 2. It's just that it is such a difficult way to play. You know, all you have to do is rewind 10 minutes and witness MaNa trying to, again, keep the lurker player under his thumb and failing. You know, all it takes is just like 1 or 2 bad fights and letting the Zerg player march across the map, and suddenly they're on your front door, especially the longer the game goes, right? The less bases are safe. And then it's real trouble unless you have Stargates. So MaNa, I mean, kudos to him playing out almost 20 minutes ground versus ground, but the safer play is definitely to go into the Sky Toss. And the Sky Toss, you know, might slow things down and might give opportunity for Lambo to respond to the Sky Toss, get his own Spire, get his own upgrades and whatnot. But it does look like, as much as I've been kind of thinking, you know, harping almost on MaNa, like, okay, Stargate, 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 come on, Stargate. We now have to actually worry about Lambo. Lambo has no Spire upgrades. Like, he does have a Spire, but he has no Spire upgrades, right? Like, he is not actually super prepared to transfer over into dealing with carriers. The first sight of them, he will start to include Corruptors in his army. But he might have to be, he might be forced back prior to the Corruptors being available, right? And that's the first thing that the carriers can do, is push back an army such as this. It's gonna take a little while, but it can happen. MaNa also trying to make sure he has a second attack on the right side. 4 lurkers and a spore crawler make things really difficult to bust. Like, that's so much attention that has to be given to this particular point. It's not impossible to break. It just, the spore specifically really is bother. Lurkers do finally take out that third base. That kind of seemed like it was, you know, MaNa actually was willing to give that up 30 seconds ago. He pulled back his entire army. Took Lambo a little while to realize that he did. And, well, this is why. Like, MaNa accepted his loss. It wasn't the most important base anyways. Waited for 3 carriers to pop out, and those do already have +1 attack. And is now going to try and race across the map and do some damage. Lambo, entirely retreating, is opening up the opportunity for MaNa to actually combine forces together and go for the attack. So, combining forces with the Archons and Stalkers and Storms, while the Corruptor count is still very, very low, these carriers have a real possibility here. There's not that many Hydras to kill their Interceptors. Again, they have that +1 already. They obviously don't have to worry about the Lurkers. They just, again, have to worry about killing them. Like, Lambo needs more time. Lambo's going to be up to 4 Corruptors. That's it. He's got Lurkers going for a run by, and the carriers are not stopping to deal with it. So MaNa's about to have Lurkers in his own natural and main base, but he is going almost for an all-in at this point. Perhaps he just didn't notice. Now he notices. As his natural gets hit, his Summon X-Core will be under threat. Is he going to pull back? Is he going to continue forward? It's such a tough decision to make. He knows the Corruptor count's not high enough, but he can't make enough headway fast enough against the Lurkers with Interceptors. They just don't kill them that fast. So what MaNa is actually maybe even waffling at this point, he decided, okay, I need to do something. I need to go back and respond, and I think that is absolutely what he needs to do. Breaking this is just a little bit dangerous, especially because you don't know if it's 3 Corruptors for the next 30 seconds or it's about to be 15. They just pop from the eggs and are about to collapse in on you, right? So really tough game here for MaNa, as he definitely had a moment of kind of like army superiority, but there's a lot of complicating factors. So the carriers went back home, they deal with it. The Lurkers are not allowed to move forward, at looks of it, or they choose not to, I guess, because the carriers are gone. The Lurkers could try and engage on top of the ground army, but they do not. Nexus of the Natural gonna go down, and just want to highlight that +2 was denied. So no more upgrades for the carriers. We do have +1 flyer attack done now for the Corruptors, and the number of them is actually good too. 18 Corruptors is a good number against 7 carriers. This attack seems a little bold, but the Storm's leading the charge, and not all of the Lurkers combined together means that MaNa will actually find some headway going after this base, which is kind of important. Great storm of those drones too, as Lambo, well, I guess he has a bank actually. Maybe it's not important yet, but if this stays dead, then it might be important. Oh, please do not move into the Lurker. Okay. Great target fire now that we're up to a very high number of carriers. Obviously, they will kill a lot of things quickly if they focus fire, including that one Viper. Gets the Abduct, so it is a trade. MaNa still has 4 carriers in the sky. 5 carriers, actually. One is yet to reinforce, I suppose, and he is looking to focus fire down some of those Lurkers. If he can get the count of Lurkers down to, let's say, like 6, then perhaps his ground army will once again reign supreme. MaNa has lost his 3rd base, but his fresh bases remained alive. But so those are only now 1.5 fresh bases, actually. He really needs another base. Both of them not rich. Lambo has finally used up that gas bank, so the mineral bank is a little less important, right? He needs this base, too. Because he's a similar situation, actually, even a slightly worse situation, in fact. Lambo is mining a bit less than MaNa. I guess he still has his 3rd, is the difference. 26 Corruptors is now maybe even, well, oh shoot, no. I was gonna say is maybe looking a little like too much, but MaNa is continuing to build carriers, so yeah. If MaNa was down to 4 carriers and actually just threw his hands up in the air and said, you know what, I'm gonna try and go ground, 26 Corruptors might be too much. But there's obviously, like, there's reasons why you don't do that as a Protoss player. Just kind of, it's a bit of a high risk, maybe reward move to go back into ground in a late game ZVP. It can work. But then what if you misjudge the amount of Lurkers they've been able to rebuild, so it's not the 8 that you thought, it's 16 or 20. Currently, the lurker count's at 12, which is enough to really do well against a ground Protoss army. That hatchery was denied. I don't think it was killed. No, it wasn't killed. It was canceled. A couple of feedbacks. Nicely done on the Viper. Does Carrier still grab a carrier? Shoot, Corruptor still grab a carrier, and trying to move up that ramp into lurkers is not going to happen. The carrier is now trying to focus fire down the lurkers. Like I was talking about, this observer remains unseen. Hey, a critical lack of overseers here for Lambo. He's got one, don't know where. Now he's going to try and pounce on top of the carriers. The High Templars are going down to the Lings. The lurkers advance forward. The Stalkers and the Archons are going to be able to take down the ground army, no problem, but are they going to be enough to protect the carriers? I don't think so. The carriers are pretty much goners, but now it raises the question, are the Corruptors too invested in? And the answer was yes. Lambo was running out of actual armor units to deal with the ground army. MaNa takes game number 1 after 26 minutes. And a great display of skill right there. That was a very, very, very difficult PvZ. Like, I don't really want to argue that the lurkers are too good. But that is the course of ZVP for the last few years. If they do get to a decent number of lurkers and they're not just basically broken, they're not mining off of only one base and, it's an absurd, stubborn Zerg situation, then you as a Protoss player need to be moving on to Stargates. All right? If there's 12 lurkers and 3 base, 2.5 bases mining even, a solid number of fodder units, like whatever the situation, like, you need to be moving on to Stargates. And MaNa actually took his sweet, sweet time doing that. Was able to successfully hold against a lurker counterattack, which is usually deadly. Like, that specifically is what usually kills the Protoss. This kills the Protoss. Is that they think, oh, I'm in a good position, I've gotten some map control, I'm up to 5 or 6 bases, I think I actually have some time here, I can play around a little bit more with the ground army. And then they get overwhelmed. They get pushed back. They admit defeats. I can't take on lurkers. And then their bases fall and their production falls, and it's game over at that point. But MaNa held. That was at minute like 14, 15, something like that. He held, and he was able to bring it back, which really makes that game extra impressive. And the bottom left, having quite a good run right now. It is MaNa. The top right is Lambo. I guess it is worth noting the first 10 minutes of that game were a little bit wonky. Definitely not up to Lambo's standards, as he aims for perfection. He lost... Not a lot of, direct damage was done. So it's not that he lost a lot of units or buildings or anything like that, but he lost... Momentum's not the right word either. He lost, cohesion when those DTs were not responded to. Every race has the factor of how smooth is the play going, right? Like, how much have I been interrupted? How much did I fall behind on my macro mechanics? All the good stuff, right? But I think Zerg is sometimes even the hardest about that. So when they get knocked off course, they can sometimes get really knocked off course, as long as it continues to snowball, basically. Like, their recovery process when they have time to breathe and they bust out drones or army is rather good. But when it comes to being thrown off, the DTs arrive, you go, oh shit, I have to deal with this. Oh shit, I didn't inject. Oh shit, my creep spread's bad. Oh shit, my 4th base didn't start. Oh shit, the next attack's on the way. Oh shit, those Archons killed my queens. Lambo is probably really off the track for a lot of that game's early to mid game, and he did write his train or whatever we're talking about here. He did write it, but it was an awkward start for him, which means that perhaps his lurker counterattack was a little less powerful than it should be. Perhaps had he not had such problems in the first 8 minutes of the game, that lurker counterattack that I was talking about that usually kills the ground-based Protoss would have actually killed MaNa. Hard to say, but no doubt about it, Lambo did not have an ideal opener. He did not have an ideal early or mid-game because those DTs were a surprise, even though they weren't supposed to be. He actually scouted the Dark Shrine, he just never went back to check on it. I think it's okay that carriers are forced as long as you get to see ground versus ground first. I agree. I mean, the perfect StarCraft game has action with the tier 1 buildings and units, action with the tier 2 buildings and units, and action with the tier 3 buildings and units, right? That is the perfect game. The 2 racks that leads into back and forth, 8 racks that leads into scrappy late game macro that leads into, you know, survival of the last 2 bases for both players because the game has just been going on for so long and it's been so back and forth. You know, like that's the best game ever. But of course, we know that there's plenty of StarCraft games where it's the 2 racks leads into a turtle. That means we're on 5 bases, ghosts turtling, and it's kind of boring. Or the Protoss is like, I'll give gateway units a go. Oh no, just kidding. No, this isn't working. Never mind. I'm gonna turtle. I'm just gonna Stargate. No. And kudos to MaNa for not ever, I guess, being browbeaten. Like it. Kudos to MaNa for not just saying, you know what, I'm terrified of lurkers, let's just go for it. Because I think you have to be scared of lurkers. I think you have to respect them. But, and I think, at the end of the day, I might argue that MaNa waited too long to go into Stargates. Maybe. But, yeah. He showed a lot of confidence in his control over the game. Which led to a lot of the really exciting battles. Interesting follow-up, we have the 3 oracles into a robo, not a Twilight Council. I'm actually going to hold off on what this actually means. Into a forge. I don't know what this is. I know the oracles are doing some damage. That's nice. Ah! Good target fire there from Lambo, weakening that 1 oracle. Lambo has not gotten a second scout in, although he could. Forge would be scouted. The robo is in the natural, though. Is he just gonna adept harass? Because I mean, it doesn't look like a mistake. He only just recently had enough gas to run a Twilight Council. What is this? Wow, okay, alright. So 4 Stalkers come across the map with the Warp Prism and 3 Oracles, of which the 3rd is almost dead, but not quite. And he's just gonna warp in basic gateway units off of 2 gateways. This is a completely normal build, aside from the Robo producing a Warp Prism. You know, and then usually a Twilight Council will be a researching blink at this point, or charge. Like, this is not extra gateways or a delayed 3rd base. This is a very odd attack, but I like it. Unfortunately, it's not going to work. Lambo, perhaps a little more wizened to it. Perhaps he has actually dealt with it prior. I think it looks weird and different, but maybe Lambo also just knows MaNa a little bit, but that was a good handling. Yeah, I think what's really important is that he didn't let that snowball, because that could have snowballed with the first 3 oracles. If the first 3 oracles kill a queen, and then a second queen, the one that's over here spreading creep, and then the army comes in as well, then the 3 oracles have less to worry about because there's less queens focus firing them. Yeah, I don't know. It is charged, by the way, now that the Twilight Council is up and running. Templar Archives on the way as well. MaNa still continuing to be very aggressive. I love his control, actually. 1 oracle, the freshest, healthiest oracle, tried to come in to kill a queen. Didn't actually work, though. Now he's going to go after the drones. And now, oh, man, MaNa. Hey! He saved his oracle again, too. Shit. I mean, I am definitely focusing on MaNa's micro here and his insistence on being aggressive. This is actually very impressive because he's macroing behind this, right? 4th base is up and running. But I do have to give a nod to Lambo. He, gets his transfuses in. He always has just enough queens. He's always focus firing. And that was just a cool action-packed moment. But MaNa is really playing quite smart, because I like that he kept his 2 oracles at home. They were severely injured. They were very likely to be sniped, first of all. But then second of all, he did need defenses back at home, because he's not producing a lot of units. Like, the amount of units that MaNa has is very low, as he grabbed all of his technology, all of his production, and then 4 bases pretty freaking quickly. Like, he's actually playing at an incredible pace. And, I could absolutely see a lot of other Protoss players, missing something crucial like walling off your natural, and then dying to the counterattack, which might still happen. Lambo's throwing just kind of all basic units across the field, but it looks like it might work out. Shield batteries at every single base, however, and the gateways finishing, as I'm speaking, might just do the trick in the defense. Oracle's also with a lot of energy. Those 2 Oracles that were left at home had a lot of energy to help out here. Storm finally done too, although it's the most effective storms, I suppose. Banelings were cleared up by the looks of things, so they were canceled, and then they tried again. Okay, yeah, nice cleanup. 6 probes go down. That got messy. There is like 4 different things happening, but the mess gets cleaned up. And Lambo, who just tried to just throw paint, is looking like a little bit of a fool right now. Maybe a fool's a bit of a strong word. He does have 5 bases and a hive and a lurker den. So he's not exactly foolish. But the attack looks a little funky now that everything gets cleared up and it looks totally fine, right? It's like, oh, that was scary. No, actually, it wasn't. Just kidding. Never mind. Okay, what is Lambo actually doing? And what Lambo is actually doing is building up. So he's actually kind of doing what MaNa just did. Like, very few army units, very basic army units, and they're being thrown across the map. But they're mostly just to, say, I guess you kind of like applied pressure, right? If they found an opening, good for them. But as they apply the pressure and take some map control, uh-oh, Baneling's not being seen. Okay, last second response. Nope, that's not gonna work out. Goodbye, probies. Goodbye. He thought the Archons take care of him, but didn't realize there was a gap here. Very unfortunate. 17 probes go down for a decent number of Banelings, and MaNa can replace those probes pretty quickly, so it's not the worst, but yeah. So yeah, Lambo behind all that, just like throwing lings and basic roaches across the map, was getting to some pretty high technology. Lurkers are already on the way with range first, of course. MaNa is still completing his ground army, right? He's still completing it with Archons and Storms, and he has yet to move out onto the map, and this is a disaster incoming, I think. Like, he has no position on the map to stall out the Lurkers. Is different than last game. Last game, I did think that MaNa was still playing too long on ground, and I think he got some very fortunate circumstances. Those surrounds they're not always found to let him survive with a ground-based army. But this is more of the ideal Zerg situation, which is that the Protoss has been completely defensive, and you now get Lurkers onto their chokes and onto their bases. See if MaNa can hold. He does have the supply. He's once again trying to save his probies, but it's not going to work out. They're all dead anyways. Good attempt to save, but his own SimCity is actually working against him many times. 20 probes go down against something that MaNa could live with if he survives the army. That is the problem. Again, the Lurkers are abusing the choke. Now, you notice the incoming surrounds, so really good pullback there from Lambo. He didn't quite have enough to just say, like, I can take this, no problem. And actually, MaNa is going to force his way through the choke. Lambo thought he had another opportunity to fight, or maybe he thought he had to because he was going to get chased down, but that was not it. Adaptive Talons not being down also affecting those battles. Lurkers might have gotten one more shot off if they had digging a faster speed burrow. War Prism did just get taken down, but apparently it was a second War Prism, so alright then. And that second War Prism held a couple of storms. Banelings have formed up again, however, and they're going right after the very vulnerable units. Attempt to save on the High Templar, saves one, and the Banelings are now just crashing through everything as MaNa's counterattack falls flat on its face. He thought he had some momentum when he took down those Lurkers in the choke, but he was absolutely wrong. Lambo's Remax potential was insane. And now we have Lambo doubling the supply of MaNa. MaNa's not tapping out because he does have 5 bases. That was just such a catastrophic engagement that he is going to lose. Had he pulled back, had he played a little more cautious, this game might be continuing on. But I can't actually blame him for thinking he had momentum there. I'm actually really surprised that Lambo dealt with that as swiftly as he did, as well as he did, to create a double supply situation after one fight. Game 3 here on Babylon. On the top left, it is Lambo. On the bottom right, it is MaNa. MaNa played one hell of a game, number 1. Kind of defying the odds as far as PvZ goes against Lurkers. Game 2, I think he also was playing a hell of a game. Very odd opener that didn't snowball as much as he was hoping for, perhaps, but it definitely allowed him to get a 4th base and set up his production and macro very well. However, I don't think MaNa was quite allowed the room he was hoping for. I can very much envision a game where the first 7 minutes or whatever it was happens like it does, where MaNa gets up to 4 bases and has the aggression, and the War Prism has to pull back, but he's got 4 bases and all his production on the way and all of his upgrades on the way and all his Storm and all High Templars and blah blah blah. And then he deals with any counterattack easy peasy. You know, like a force field on the ramp situation. Like, boom, got it, nailed it. And then he is just smooth sailing into some serious pressure. Like, he just smoothly goes into charge out Archon Storm and moves out on the map and starts to be aggressive with an actual full-sized army. But he got tripped up just as he was putting the finishing touches on his build, is what it feels like. Like, the actual finishing touches, right? Like, he's building his house, and he goes to put, like, the little, like, gargoyle on, and then the gargoyle breaks everything. Because he did struggle to deal with Lambo's kind of wild counterattack. And while initially I kind of was like, oh, what was that, Lambo? Like, that didn't seem to actually do a whole lot. Because it didn't. Killed 6 probes and caused mostly just time problems. Lambo took that time to put on the finishing touches of his build, I guess, right? Like, he might have been a little screwed up earlier on, but not too bad. He throws his army across the map almost haphazardly. But then he's skyrocketing up to 5 bases, all the drones, the lurker technology, and he's the one that gets to actually smoothly move into his end game, which is getting to those lurkers and getting on the map and doing the attacks. It's like Lambo might have got tripped up in the beginning, but his mid to end game was great. MaNa was not tripped up in the beginning at all, and his mid to late game or end game of his build was completely messed up. Which is really just odd to say because, again, that Roachling counterattack, you know, got into the natural, which is a little annoying, but it killed 6 probes. So, like, how could that be such a big problem? Well, I think it actually was. I think that really tripped up the momentum that was built up with MaNa's build, and most importantly, I guess, allowed Lambo to thrive behind that pressure with all the time that he bought. So he didn't just dive towards a lurker den. He had 5 bases and a bunch of drones and stuff. It's pretty interesting PvZ, though. I'm glad that I have things to actually wonder about and think about and say, well, if this had gone differently, maybe it goes differently. It's also apparently very evenly matched. Now we're tied up in 1-1. MaNa has gone into a Stargate opener once again. I don't know if he's going to go for any of the weirder Robo follow-ups. I feel like this map would actually be pretty good for a Twilight Council. Blink follow-up pressure over into the space. People putting Gorgos on their house nowadays. I mean, I wish people would. I was absolutely thinking of like a Lego house or like a Sims house, to be clear. But imagining MaNa as some like super construction man who just like casually builds his own house and puts a gargoyle on it is also pretty amusing. So far, very typical third base follow-up for MaNa. Still no sign of Twilight Council or Robo. I am hoping for Twilight Council with this third gas. We just got enough minerals and gas, but he actually adds on a forge. Oh, now we have enough gas. Sorry. The gas was... No, wait. Yes. Yes. 150, 150, right? Now he's microing, of course. And he is microing many units, not just the Adepts. Oracle comes back in for an amazing stasis trap. I actually thought that was going to not work. This drone is the culprit. And then Oracle is also... Oh! Stasis trapping the rallying drones. How about that? I did not expect to see that. Okay, awesome. So those are very effective stasis traps. And MaNa is going to go for the Robo. So he definitely had enough gas for the Robo. When I said that he had enough gas for something. And then he did have enough for a Twilight Council at one point, but it wasn't his choice. Did not choose to go for the Twilight Council. So now it's a double Robo follow-up, because I was going to say, if it's going to be that same Stalker pressure, we're not actually... It's not nearly as fast as last time. The Robo is definitely later, and we don't have the Stalker warp-ins yet. So it's double Robo. See, the problem with this composition, not that I'm saying that this is a bad idea, I'm just pointing out why we might not see it a whole lot, is that Robo units don't produce all that quickly. They don't produce en masse, right? But they make up for the lack of quantity with a lot of quality. So it's great, you know, back to the Protoss roots. Good old Protoss Deathball. Let's go Void Rays and Colossus. But then you don't have really any map presence. You don't have any pressure once the Zerg realizes what you're doing. Your units might not be properly protected. You know, imagine running out with slow Zealots covering your 4 Disruptors. I feel like the 4 Disruptors could actually be taken down. So I am once again very curious how MaNa's going to play this out. He is going to, I believe, go into charge at Archon once again. 6 gas is getting up here. Maybe his build is a little off. He's a little late to the Robo Bay, because his Robo... #1 Robo finished a while ago. He's going to get a Dark Shrine at the same time. Just grab everything. Why not? And a 4th base is on the way, too. I mean, as much as I'm kind of pondering how this works out for MaNa, I haven't even really thought about whether or not Lambo can tell what the hell is going on. His Overseer gets into the main base and is going to see the double Robo, Dark Shrine, Robotics Bay, yada yada yada. Lambo is setting up for a potential swell of Ling, Baneling, Roach Ravager. So the last 2 games, he went pretty quickly into the Infestation Pit. And that just kind of took away the real power, I suppose, of the Ling, Baneling, Roach Ravager attack. You know, it's not that you can't still afford to do it, but it might be a little later. And it would not really mesh well with the Infestation Pit going into a hive, going into a Lurker, and going into upgrades. So those are the 2 paths. And right now with that Oracle Revelation, MaNa knows that the Lurker path has not been chosen this game. So he needs to really worry about the mass army. I don't want to say Ling, Baneling, Roach Ravager again and again and again. It's too many words. But that's really what it is. Like, every single one of those is an important part of the composition. A couple of probes died to a Baneling run by, I guess. So MaNa knows the attack is underway. Baneling speed is not quite done, so maybe Lambo won't attack right here, right now. But absolutely, MaNa needs to get some defenses up. A couple of gateways for some SimCity, a couple of Archons, absolutely stasis traps. MaNa has 20 less army supply, which is not too bad. That's actually totally fine for Protoss versus Zerg, right? And he does have his charge and his Archons. So what he doesn't have are those Disruptors or Colossus. 2 Disruptors literally just popped. For how much this build emphasized Robos, I thought this actually would be a lot faster. The Disruptors are here. Are they going to be enough to help out? A couple of good force fields with the SimCity. And the Archon's really lasting a lifetime, but no shield battery might be the kicker here. I actually wonder, 2 shield batteries behind that, was that almost invulnerable? That is disappointing. No shield batteries from MaNa. I didn't even pick up on it, actually. I was looking at other things, and I think MaNa might just die now. He does have a Zealot run by, trying to do some damage, but Lings are responding. And the Zealots are gonna die before they kill the hatchery. MaNa's 4th base gets killed. Queens advance their creep. MaNa down to 3 bases. But not a super intimidating army. Now he's down 50 army supply, which again is something that Protoss can handle. Quality over quantity. But only if the Disruptors hit well. Only if there's a little static defense to support you. And we finally have a shield battery on the way for the 3rd base. But yeah, that was just straight up missed a shield battery, didn't it? I can't really blame MaNa too much because I totally forgot. But that seems like an oversight for sure. Unless it died. Maybe it was next to the gateway and it got corrosive biled. Yeah, he's gonna tap out. Even then, 1 back here could have been a huge difference maker. Ah, well. Lambo with the 2-1 proves to be the better ZVP player today. But as I said, I think you can tell that was just close.